asked during that period. But not everybody's very happy about it. So how many people know Helen Thomas? She's been covering presidents since, I don't know, Roosevelt maybe? And this really created a controversy because there's a whole bunch of outcry, and she was kind of the ringleader of denouncing the fact that the White House is trying to control the press. You didn't allow us to ask the questions. But I asked the question, my partner actually brought this up to me, and he was pissed. Yeah, did you see what the White House did this time? It's like, well, think about it a second. There's how many people in the White House press corps? 40, 50? And they get to ask the questions. They provide the filter, right? They're in charge of determining what the American people want, or is it better to have 100,000 people participate in that process? That's what's different about this game. We talked a lot about the constant change, and we like to throw this slide up because it kind of demonstrates, since our life of our company, what fairly significant technological changes have occurred that impact our business and what we deliver to our customer. And social media is now something that's really come into the mainstream, but it really started coming around a couple of years ago. But to answer the question about what makes Twitter different, or what makes change important to think about, and why is there game-changing occurrences like Twitter? And here's Biz Stone. Biz Stone is one of the co-founders of Twitter. He basically says, we did not know what we had until we built it. We didn't understand what it was for until people started using it. And it was just an idea. They thought this was a good idea. And it wasn't until it actually got out there that they started recognizing what it was very valuable for. And that's the key point, is that people that don't use Twitter don't get Twitter. They don't conceive of why it's important and why it's a game-changing event. And here's one of the anecdotes that I like to tell people about Twitter in general, and that is, this is changing, and it's very significant, but why? Well, there's 2 or 3 facets. One of them is, how do you get information? How does new news events or information that you're looking for get to you? And Twitter has the habit of actually channeling things that you're interested to you if you set it up properly. And so I just go through, and you hear about these famous things like, you know, the attack in Mumbai last fall was first announced to the world on Twitter. That when the plane landed in the Hudson, the first instance of that was Twitter. Okay, but I've had dozens and dozens and dozens of experience where I first learned of all sorts of news. Michael Jackson dying, the announcement of Facebook going over 300 million people yesterday. I learned it first on Twitter because it's real time, and that's an important point we'll kind of talk about here. But some people do get it. There's actually quite a few people out there that are using social media successfully. There's not a lot of case studies. There's not a lot of things that we can hold our hands up and say, hey, this is the answer, this is what you want to do. But there are very, very significant case studies out there that are emerging. And this is one that kind of demonstrates a correlation between successful brands, the use of social media, and unsuccessful brands that don't. But this is probably not how you want to handle it. And that is having a group of people, a committee, trying to make a decision and debate, well, what are we going to put in our 140 characters on Twitter? And I hope your organizations are not going through this process right now, because Twitter is really about being able to communicate, being able to have people interact, be able to have personal relationships. And one of the better lines that's coming on my partner MJ's mouth, he's our creative guy, sorry, he does say things occasionally that are really profound. This is one of them. And that is that people actually want to have relationships with people, not brands. And I think that's the point of social media that we need to pay attention to. So what are these people doing out there? Well, they're doing all sorts of things. They're updating blogs and wikis and doing different types of crowdsourcing behavior. People are putting up reviews. They're initiating discussions. They're updating statuses. And that all has the habit of actually starting to put out onto the internet, where it's all findable, where it's all shareable, basic communications that goes on between humans. And here's an example of, I'm going to do some sharing. So you see a lot of websites do this now. And what we're trying to do is simply make it easy for people to share your information. And there's an old rule in PR that I'm sure many of you know, that the most important thing about PR is to make sure that the editor's or the writer's job is easy. If we can give them stuff that makes it their job easy, then they're more likely to run our stuff. Well, this is a case of that. We're just simply trying to make it easy. We're trying to get information out there so that it can, in fact, be shared. This is some pretty interesting things, I think, in terms of searches. You see at the top part of the graph, that's Google, and that is how many people are actually going to Google on a daily basis, or any of these sites on a daily basis. So about a third of everybody that's on the internet goes to Google at some point in a day. The middle line, you take a look at, is Facebook, and look at the growth rate. And it's actually accelerating. This growth rate is actually going like this, and it's getting higher and higher and higher every month. And down the bottom, you see Twitter. Okay, this is back in July. This is actually a substantial rise, and it's coming along. It's not anything like Facebook, but it's an important subcomponent. And then this little blip right here, you see? This is when Microsoft introduced Bing. And even though it's small, it certainly had an impact when they actually released it. So just in general, the fact that people do go use social media is becoming increasingly popular. During this survey period, it became the 4th most popular thing to do on the internet, eclipsing email. So email is one of those things which is in decline. And here's a quiz for you. How many people have kids between 15 and 30? All right. How many people have kids 25 to 30? And then how many people have kids that are between 15 and 20 or less than 20? Do you notice, and for those that have both, do you notice a difference in behavior in terms of how they use media? And if not, I have this case where I see a lot of difference between these sub-generations. And in general, what the stats are saying right now is that the older portion of Generation Y likes email, and they like email a lot. If you're under 20, I would venture to say the use of email is almost zero. Okay. And that's telling me something. Number one, in a few years, just because of demographics and aging population, email will decline. But it's also telling me that there's an alternative. And that is what social media is all about. This is an example of, again, what people do. Well, have anybody heard the term social graph? This happens to be my social graph at this point in time of Facebook. These are all my Facebook friends. And you kind of see I have some very close friends, and they're kind of bucketed into groups or tribes, if you will. And then I have people that are maybe not so close, but they're still, they're friends of mine on Facebook. Well, what this gets to is this, the idea of social relevancy. Okay. So in other words, I have all these connections, and I'm sure somewhere along the line I'm connected to Kevin Bacon, but he's probably more than a few steps away. And the relevancy really has an impact on influence and who we listen to. And so if somebody makes a product recommendation, the people that are closest to us are more likely to have more influence on us than the people that are farther away. But because this is all digital, because it's all online, because it's all searchable, we can use these relationships in a very, very effective way. And that's going to be a big part of marketing now and in the future. This is an example of an ad. It's actually a page that runs on Facebook, and it's from VW. And what it does is that when you load it up, it asks you, do you mind if I interrogate your information? And it goes through and it looks at my profile, finds my interests. It looks at my friends, and it finds their interests, whatever's available through my connections. And then it uses all that information to make product recommendations based on what I've said about myself and what other people say about themselves, and how that social relevancy and what that means to me. So apparently, I need one of these two cars. Now, I've never bought a Volkswagen, so I don't know if I'd be in the market, but it's intriguing nonetheless. So the quick question I have is, okay, where are we going? Great, we have this huge explosion of social media. We have, like I said, 300 million people using Facebook, untold people using social media for all sorts of purposes, and they're self-describing themselves in groups of people with affinity or tribes or swarms, as we heard yesterday. So what's going to happen next? And I think that's an extraordinarily good question. Well, first and foremost, I think it's how we access. This is what I think in a few years has been promised for a long time, but I'm absolutely convinced it's soon. And that is the idea of we will be computing in the clouds. We already, as an example we saw today, the servers you have are not here. They're someplace else. They're in the cloud, and you're connected through fiber to get to them because it's a better alternative. And this is happening very fast.